Hey team, Ollie here, and I was super excited to make a video to share with you about some of the main things that I've learned in my first year of sambar hunting that have enabled me to be successful. Ultimately, I think that it's been knowledge generously shared by a number of absolutely legendary blokes and through trawling through a lot of resources that have helped me to bag a total of 4 sambar in my first year of hunting. 3 of them were with significant support from some much more experienced hunters than myself. But one was an absolutely solo mission where I scouted the spot on Google Maps and Google Earth by myself, headed there, crossed a river by myself for the first time, got in, spotted the deer, managed to take it down in a single shot, had to butcher it for the first time by myself, which took about 2.5 hours, if I'm being honest, and then pack it out in the dark well after midnight, back across the river, and then to work early the next morning in what was 100% the biggest adventure I've ever had in my life. And I struggle to think of anything else that would be as rewarding as kind of like the whole journey leading up to that moment, as well as the actual hunt itself. So it's my hope that this video is going to share a lot of the knowledge that I've learned in that first year in a quick and concise way to help you bag your first sambar, or if you had some luck and you got some skill already, maybe bag a few more in future as well. Just to briefly take you through those 4 deer successfully harvested before we jump to the vid. This is the Shell 7mm 08. Shout out to Aussie Bush Harvest Profty for recommending this cartridge. It's a really good one. That's the Shell. I wasn't able to recover the projectile from the first animal, but that's the first one. That was with Zeb. On that same hunt with Zeb, I also managed to get a second sambar. There's the jacket and the projectile from that one. It might come into focus for you in a moment. This is the one I'm definitely most proud of. This is the one from my solo hunt, and this is Norma. These are all Norma tip strike, 160 grains. Beautiful mushroom, that third one. That was actually through the front shoulder, broke the front leg, straight through the heart, and then buried in the offside shoulder. And this is, if you're on this video, you might have come over from the Sam's Hunt and Cook one, and you might have seen the video of my hunt with Sam. This is the shell, or the jacket, should I say, from the ELDX 162 grain out of that 7mm 08. My first hand load that I successfully took an animal with, so that's got a nice story to it as well. So yeah, I just thought I'd quickly go through that. Hopefully that gets you excited for the next bit of content, and hopefully there's something in here that's of value to you. I'm obviously, because I'm so new to this, by no means an expert, so take everything you hear with a grain of salt, but I'm sure there'll be something in here that's of value to you. Enjoy. So we're kind of structuring these ideas under kind of 5 key areas. We've got prep. So what do you want to do before you even think about getting out there? Where to hunt, some tips about finding some places. On the ground, what do you do once you actually kind of get there and you're scoping out a place? How to hunt, how to actually try to take down the deer, and then mindset. This is in no way a comprehensive overview. It's just 10 things that I've found really helpful and that were kind of all realizations to me, and I think have helped me along the way. So the first is get obsessed and learn from the best. I want to just take you through a little tour of some of the books that I've found helpful and read in this first year. I can't recommend reading enough, as well as I'm sure a lot of you are already following a lot of great YouTubers. But I'll start with the books and then I'll move out to other things. So I started with this one, Sambar the Magnificent Deer by Mike Harrison. Mike Harrison ran a bunyip sambar enclosure for a long time, and this book covers a lot about the kind of development of sambar, how they came into Australia, and their behaviour. So that's a really, really good one. Probably not the most practical in terms of practically getting a deer on the ground, but I think it's absolutely fantastic in terms of getting to know the animals. And probably my favourite thing about this book is the fact that it's got some of Mike's poetry in it, which is beautiful, beautiful stuff about sambar. Next book I read, and this was one that was recommended in Mike Harrison's book, is Bush Stalking Sambar Deer by Frank Moore, which is a good little practical initial guide. From that, I moved on to Sambar Hunter by Lou Servey. Now, this is awesome. Like, this guy is such a good story writer, and it's just super inspiring and get you absolutely frothing to get out after them. After that, I was keen to learn a bit more about shooting, because I did just recently get my firearms license. So I read this one on Long Range Shooting Handbook by Ryan Kleckner. He's got a bunch of good videos on YouTube as well. This was just really good for getting my head around mils, MOA, dialing, trajectory of bullets, all that kind of stuff. Really, really great starter's book. The next one, this is probably the one that's like influenced me the most, so I learned the most from, is the Hunt Smart System by Errol Mason. I actually got this one from an ADA, Australian Deer Association meeting, and they often have a raffle at the ADA meetings, and this was in the raffle. I didn't win it, but an absolutely lovely bloke next to me, Bruno, shout out to Bruno if you ever watch this, he won it, and he's quite an experienced hunter, and he said he already had a copy, and we'd been chatting, and he was like, here you go, mate, you can have it. So Bruno, just to let you know, I've done my homework, mate. Here's my sticky notes. I've even written a summary of this, which to try to like condense some of the ideas and distill them. This is an amazing book. I feel like this really helped me to learn a lot. I can't recommend it highly enough, and I think it's an awesome place to get started. The book I'm currently on, and I would have read this first, to be honest, if I had managed to get a copy of it, is Walking the Up, which I'm loving, from Ken Pierce. Ken actually passed away. Rest in peace, Ken, a couple of months ago. But this is an amazing book, and I'm sure if you've heard of any books about sambar hunting, you've probably heard about this one. The other places I've learned is from actual people. So probably the biggest thing I've learned, or the way that I've learned the most, was actually going on a guided hunt with Zeb. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've probably come across Zeb's sambar hunting safaris. And on that hunt, I actually said to Zeb, I don't care about shooting big stags. I just want to learn. So what I want you to do is I want you to take me to a new place that you've never been before, and I want to watch you. I want you to narrate how you're analyzing country. And so that's where I kind of learned how to read the bush a lot better, how to read sign a lot better, and it really helped me understand what I was looking for in terms of trying to find a productive area, some of which I'll share with you in a moment. So I can't recommend enough getting out there with experienced guys. You also might have made your way to this video from a video over on the Sam's Hunt and Cook channel. I also was lucky enough to go out with Sam a couple of weeks ago, and Sam is extremely experienced. Anytime you can have a chance to go out with a bloke or a person who's more experienced than you, get out there, openly take the role of learner. Don't be there trying to show them everything you know. Just really be open to learning as much as you can from them, and communicate that as well. I also did Errol Mason's course, which I found really, really helpful, and was my first time kind of viewing undisturbed deer, which kind of gave me a different perspective on the animals. And actually, since then, I've been able to independently view some undisturbed deer, which is pretty special. And kind of your hunting really goes from another level when you go from kind of bump and shoot or get honked and then manage to shoot them kind of a vibe, to when you're actually kind of getting the drop on them. That's a real game changer. I think that perhaps this first point is actually the most important one, because sam hunting is really, really hard, and it takes a lot of patience, which I'll come to later as well. And to be honest, if you don't get obsessed, if you don't really have a hunger for knowledge, I think probably you're not going to stick in the game, but you're also very unlikely to be successful. So that's the first idea. Get obsessed and learn from the best. The second point is get to know your rifle. Because sambar hunting is so hard and you get so few opportunities, especially when you're starting out, it's absolutely crucial that when an opportunity comes, you can make the most of it. The way that I got to know my rifle, and when I say get to know your rifle, basically what I mean is you need to practice shooting in the field positions, in the kind of positions, stances, and so on that you're likely to shoot in when you're actually in the bush. It's all well and good getting, all your bullets in an inch or a couple of inches at 100 meters or yards off the bench, but that doesn't count for much if you can't actually shoot offhand when you need to, or shoot by resting off a tree when you need to, or shoot off a bipod when you need to. I subscribe to Zeb's Patreon, which I find awesome, and he posted up a video there on dry fire practice, and he's talked about it in a few of his podcasts as well. And I have done a lot of that to get to know my rifle. What that means is, to put that into practical terms, for that month leading up to my very first hunt with Zeb, every night I was in the shed for, not too long, 10 to 15 minutes. I might send you an image of the shed, but basically I've taken some pictures of sambar deer. I've shrunk them down so that when I stand 5 meters away, they're about the right size to be between 50 and 100 meters away. And I just cycle the bolt, pull up, safety off, practice my breathing, shoot, right? And I just do that over and over again until I'm confident that when it goes click, the crosshairs are in the vital zone on the deer. And thanks to that, when a moment came when I went on that hunt with Zeb, I spotted a deer about somewhere between 60 and 80 meters away. I was nowhere any rests. I had to take an offhand shot. I was able to execute. The first bit of blood. See the bubbles? Means that we got it in the lung. She's gone. Look at that. So that's the second point, get to know your rifle. Okay, where to hunt. This is one of the trickiest ones, and I've spent hours and hours poring over Google Maps, Google Earth, the More to Explore app, Gaia, which is the GPS system that I use rather than a Venza or something like that. I find Gaia to be really great. Finding a spot is hard. Two key things that have helped me. The first, which is maybe things you've heard of in other places, is trying to find fringe property. I want to do much more backpacking, but realistically for me, working and living in Melbourne, it's hard for me to get away for multiple days to really get into the high country, or the deep high country. So I'm hunting more around local areas, not too far out of Mansfield, that kind of area. So I'm looking for places that are likely to hold deer, that haven't had too much hunting pressure, but that's within a few hours drive of Melbourne. I've found that fringe property is good and stuff near waterways is good. The other thing to think about is try to go places where others are unlikely to go. My third Sambar that I mentioned, which was the one that I got fully solo, that deer I found in a pretty productive looking gully, pretty close to a major town. However, I had to cross a river on foot to get there. The reason I hunted there because I thought this looks like a tricky river. I don't think many people will be bothered going through this one. So I went through it, and 800 meters beyond that crossing point, there was a deer. The other thing, so that's the unlikely to go part. But the other part is areas that are too obvious. Now, I'm going to be a bit cryptic here and not explain exactly what I mean about too obvious, because I don't want to give away one of the best ways that I managed to find pretty productive spots. But have a think to yourself, places that people might think are too obvious might actually be so obvious that no one goes there. On the ground, so what do we actually do when we're on the ground? So this was probably the biggest lesson that I learned from Zeb. These next two lessons are probably the biggest two things I learned from Zeb. The first is you need to ensure that the terrain is huntable. If you're bashing around in really thick scrub, which is what I did for a long time, multiple trips when I was first starting out, you might bump a lot of deer, but you're never going to get a shot at them unless you're an amazing snap shooter. But, for most of us, that's not the case. It's really crucial to be in terrain where you can see and you have a chance of seeing the deer before they see you. Or even if you get honked and they move a little bit, you've got a chance of actually seeing them. So make sure you're walking through territory that's kind of huntable, it's wide, it's open enough, the ground's not too noisy that you can't move around quietly. These are some really important considerations. The next thing is you need to take sign really seriously. I spent a lot of time walking around a country that might be huntable, but there was no fresh sign. And you just don't see deer. If there's no fresh scat, then there's probably no deer around. Or if there are, there's not a high density of them and you're in very low probability territory. So get to know fresh sign. Basically, if you see some deer shit, pick it up, smell it. If you can smell it and there's a scent and might be a day or a few days old, if you can crush it in your fingers, it's probably a week old or so, ideally you want the scat with a bit of mucus on it, because if there's kind of a slimy layer, then it's really quite fresh, and that's when you're really on. I now go to a lot of places, look for sign, and if I don't see it, I'm not going back to that place. If you've watched the video with Sam, we were in an area that I'd scouted about 2 weeks earlier. I'd seen a significant amount of fresh sign, probably 3 or 4. Even in that first area we were kind of hunting from, 3 or 4 fresh sets of fresh sign with a mucus on them, and I thought this is a spot that's worth going back to, which is why I headed back there with Sam a little later on. So take sign seriously. If you're in a place without sign that's got that mucus on it, or that's particularly fresh and there's a reasonable amount of it, I would recommend don't bother going back there. You're probably just wasting your time. Okay, how to hunt. Oh, and another one on that one. There's a Peter Burke video on YouTube, Understanding Sambar Sign or something like that. I'll try to put a link in the description. Watch that. It goes for like an hour. Peter's absolutely hilarious, and I've watched that like 5 times. It's really worth it. How to hunt. First thing is to start hunting as soon as you leave the vehicle. So if I think about the deer that I've shot 2 with Zeb. That was obviously in the high country down in the Wanangata. The one I shot solo that was only 800 meters from kind of where I crossed that river, and the one I shot with Sam recently, that was probably 200 meters from where we left the car, 150 meters from where we crossed a little creek. So don't expect to have to walk for 5Ks before you get to where the deer are. In fact, they're often very close to the edge of the bush, because they can't be bothered. They're coming out into the fields to feed. Why would they go further into the bush than they need to? So you really just be alert, be aware, and start that hunting and that stalking as soon as you leave your vehicle. This is another thing that I struggle with at the start. So go slow through good stuff. If you're in good territory with good sign, you want to be going crazy slow, because the deer are most likely being more still than you. And if you go into the bush with a mate and one of you stands still and the other one's walking around, if you're standing still, it's pretty obvious where the other bloke is. And so the deer have much better senses than us, essentially, apart from their eyesight. So if they're standing still, or if they're bedded and you're walking around quite quickly, they're going to spot you before you spot them, and then you're in trouble. So if you're in the good stuff, move slowly, be stalking, be looking in a systematic way. However, if you're in thick stuff, you're not going to get the drop on the deer. There's no point being a ninja through really thick stuff where you're not likely to get a chance. You kind of just got to take it and go like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit noisier here. I'm not going to be shooting any deer here. Move through the thick stuff and spend more time in the good country rather than in the crappy country. And the third thing is, it isn't over just because you're honked. I might share the story in a bit more detail at some point, but my first solo Sambar, which was something around that 9-month mark from when I first got my firearms license and really started to think about, I want to start to chase Sambar deer. She actually honked me, and then I stood for 20 minutes, dead still, looking through my binos before I spotted her. And that was actually because on the way up to that hunt, I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember the podcast now, unfortunately, but they had said often new hunters think that when they're honked, the game's up. That's not the case at all. Often that's just the start of an interaction that you're likely to have. And the final point is about mindset. So I would say that enjoy the bush. Patience is a huge factor in Sambar hunting. Because it's likely to take many trips into the bush to get to a point where you are a really confident Sambar hunter. I'm definitely not. I wouldn't call myself a confident Sambar hunter at this point. You want to make sure that you just enjoy being in the bush, and that you are really grateful and relish that experience. What that's going to mean is that you're happy enough to be there, and you're in a mindset where you're happy to learn. You bump a deer and you go, oh, that's interesting. What happened? Where was I? What was I doing wrong so that it saw me before I saw it? And then when you sit down afterwards, you just kind of sit in there going, oh, wow, isn't it great to be out here? And if you have that mindset, you'll be happy to be in the bush. And the more time in the bush, the better you'll get, and the more successful you're likely to be. As I said at the start, I'm by no means an expert. But these are 10 things that I think if I had heard at the start of a bit over a year ago, it might have accelerated my journey even more so. So yeah, hope that was handy. Anything that you found helpful. Love to hear it in the comments. Anything I got wrong, tell me in the comments, ideally in a nice way, but if not, don't really care. I just want to learn more. So if there's something you can teach me, please do. I hope you found it helpful, and I might see you out there.